Meeting. My name is Carol. I'll be your host today. And today we're reading from, yet again, the Smart Recovery Handbook. And we are in we're in the fifth chapter here. Point 3, managing thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Get the chat open here. Hello. Okay, there we go. Alrighty, and I left off at, as human beings, it's normal to exaggerate events that involve us. When you find yourself automatically thinking negative thoughts or exaggerating and judging how bad you are, remind yourself of your humanity and of those traits that we all share. By identifying unhelpful thoughts and replacing them with more accurate and helpful thoughts of acceptance, you'll feel better and want to act in healthier ways. Hi, Cosmic Christy. How you doing today? I forgot to bring my mic over. Good to see you. After practicing this for a while, more accurate thinking will become automatic for you. Like most things, though, it takes practice. Downing beliefs. We commonly hold on to downing beliefs in which we put ourselves, others, and our lives down. By doing so, we end up feeling guilty, ashamed, and depressed. I messed up again. I'm a total failure, or angry. He treated me badly. He's a total jerk. These inaccurate and exaggerated downing beliefs can lead to the powerfully distressing feelings that can trap you in a cycle of addictive behavior. You can choose to replace downing belief with these accepting principles. And I'm going to put this this little side picture here, and I'm going to put that up on the screen here. I accept myself because I'm alive and have the capacity to enjoy my existence. I am not my behavior. I can evaluate my behavior, but it is impossible to accurately and honestly evaluate the complexity of myself. I strive for achievement only to enhance the enjoyment of my existence, not to prove my worth. That's a big one. Failing at a task doesn't make me a failure. I can choose to accept myself even if I am unwilling or unable to change my character defects, because there is no law of the universe that says I can't. My self-approval cannot come from pandering to an external source or bowing to any external authority. My self-acceptance can only come from within me, and I am free to choose it at any time. Nick Rzajcik, MSW Smart Facilitator. I'm guessing at the name pronunciation there. So we've got 3 things here: unconditional self-acceptance, unconditional other acceptance, and unconditional life acceptance. Unconditional self-acceptance, or USA, is the idea that you have worth just as you are. This explains what separates you, your character traits, personality, strengths, and weaknesses from your behaviors. Get that off of here now. Well, unshare. Oh, there she is. Hi, you guys.
Hey.
Sarah. Christy, this is
Hey!
Sarah. See everybody, this is Sarah.
Hi, Sarah. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Hi.
Well, here. So we're on. Did y'all get to hear any of that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Self-acceptance is hard. And that was,
It's hard.
you're worthy just as you are, not you're a human being, not a human doing.
Right.
Mhm.
Those are all true statements, but they're easier to do mental assent to than to actually believe.
Yeah. Yes. Agreed.
And Cosmic Christy says hi.
Hi, Cosmic.
This is why SMART doesn't use labels. You may have addictive behaviors, but you are not an addict. Huh? That's not what other recovery programs have taught us.
Mhm.
But while we might seem like a game of words, it's important to recognize how powerful words and labels are. The same labels that you may carry internally, failure, disappointment, or loser, led to your unhealthy behaviors. Attaching new labels won't help. That makes sense.
Mhm.
If you can't accept yourself, can you really expect others to? Even if they do, would you believe them? Accepting yourself may be difficult. You may have caused others and yourself extreme harm and pain. You may have ruined the lives of others, plunged your family into debt, brought diseases into trusting relationships, or squandered your life savings. Who can forgive that? Not everyone can, but you can forgive yourself and accept that you are a worthwhile person in spite of your past behaviors. Be patient with and kind to yourself. Be honest about what you've done. Accept that you can't change the past, but you can create the future. You may be tempted to compare yourself to others or hold yourself up to some arbitrary standard. There is no standard or universal measure of your value. I'm going to say that again. There is no standard or universal measure of your value. You stand alone in your self-worth. Comparing yourself to others is as meaningless as judging one color against another. Is red good or bad? Is blue more valuable than green? Love that.
I like that.
Unconditional other acceptance, UOA. You may judge other people inaccurately and in an exaggerated way, just as you judge yourself. Once you accept that other people are capable of making mistakes, then you can accept that they may fail at things too. Judging another as totally bad, no matter how badly they treat you, is that exaggerated and as damaging as making the same judgment about yourself. Unconditional life acceptance, ULA. You can judge life in the same way as being completely unfair or totally terrible. When you find yourself thinking, life sucks, it couldn't be more awful, remind yourself of the good things that have happened in your life. If you can accept that there are many things you can't control, it may help you to better accept what life throws at you, even if you don't like it. Good stuff.
I like that. I like that.
Sorry.
You got another fly?
Yes. We live around cows, so there are always flies.
Oh, yes.
Even
Oh,
one day, even in the middle of winter, there's going to be flies.
right, right.
This cold snap definitely brought them in too.
Oh,
Okay.
Right.
How does a cold snap bring them in?
Because they're just like any other animal and they're trying to avoid
Oh,
freezing to
inside
death.
in. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
hi, Zelda.
Hi, Zelda.
Nice. Very nice.
So was it just me, or did I kind of interpret that maybe because of me as basically describing codependence? Like when you hand over your self-worth to other people's approval, when
Mhm.
you're working to gain other people's approval.
Mhm.
I mean, that would fit in there if you have, beliefs about yourself that are not true, but you've been led to believe they're true. It can certainly lead to that. I don't see how it couldn't,
Or like how many of us addicts, because I guess I went to Green Shoe, which is all about like facing codependence
Oh, I didn't know that.
and understanding that sort of aspect of yourself. And one of the prerequisites is that you stop addiction, that you stop addictive behavior before you face like the why you're drinking.
Mhm.
And a lot of times it's looking for that external validation, that I am good enough, I am worthy enough.
Yeah. Ruh-roh, we lost you, Sarah.
Oh, she was making such an amazing point.
We lost you, Sarah. We lost your audio and video. Do I have my phone here? I do not have my phone here. Shoot.
There. Back.
Hey, there she is.
I can't hear you guys now, though.
You can't? You can't hear
I
us?
can't hear you. Here, let me leave and restart it, or let me.
Okay.
I got to do something about this lighting. This is driving me nuts on my end.
I have some little lights around me, but
Oh, I think it's my laptop because my phone doesn't do this. Maybe there's a setting inside of my laptop that I haven't found yet. Because
maybe
even when I go back and watch it, I look really washed out. I'm like, oh, look terrible.
you know,
But
and some webcams are better than others.
yeah, I think I
Yeah.
have one that's probably just not great. But she was making an amazing point. I loved where she was going with that. There you go.
Here's
Sorry. I was actually receiving a phone call from a friend who is very, very codependent, but still struggling with drinking, and so she's not ready to face that. And
yeah.
then she ends up in relationships where like the guy is very, very controlling, and her need to people please. Like it's that dangerous line that we walk, where like, seeking my dad's approval is one way that it started, which he denied until the day he died, and of course when you're looking for yourself outside of yourself, that's the problem. And then my friend who I was speaking to currently is drinking. She's like, I just want to be loved for myself. I just want unconditional love. And she was drunk when she was telling me all this. And I had to say, that is for infants only. Like adult love has conditions.
You know, I was going to say about infants is that we learn about ourselves through the mirror image of our parents, and so it is a hard thing to break out of. I mean, that's the first lesson we learn is how to interpret the world around us,
Right.
through the person taking care of us. We lost your audio and video again. Must be another call coming in.
Zelda makes a good point. She said, I think as I got old, we're going to say older. We're not going to say you're old, Zelda. Older. My self-worth increased. Maybe that's why it took me 27 years to get clean.
Okay.
I do think I have found for myself as I age, I definitely see my self-worth a lot different than I did when I was, when I was younger. But Sarah, you were making an amazing point. So please continue with what you were saying.
Well, okay, I was kind of like losing where I was saying, oh, well, she's like, I just want to be loved unconditionally. And I'm like, but then you set up conditions to where you're unlovable. Like you're asking someone to love you while you abuse them, and you can't, like when you feel unloved and you're seeking that validation from someone else, you put them in situations where in order for them to be healthy, they have to have boundaries to protect themselves.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter what the relationship is. Like even with my own children, like I cannot love them unconditionally. They can love themselves unconditionally. I can love myself unconditionally, but they're adults and we have to have conditions for how we treat each other, because otherwise you're signing up for abuse.
Right.
That's true.
Right.
So it's just, and that's where, I don't know, at least alcoholism for me is in finding healthy relationships where you don't just lay down to be the doormat, because a lot of my self-worth came from being a caregiver. I was just like taking care of my family. That's where my validation came from. That's where I felt good. I do believe my love language is service. So that ties in, but that makes it even more mucky for me to untangle, because then I create a codependence where I need them to need me so that I feel value of myself. And that's not healthy.
That's true.
That's true.
So how are you working through all of that? Are you a caregiver now? Are you navigating those waters? Like, how does that look for you at this time?
Well, I have two young children still that I am caretaking of, but and Carol knows more about the story. I took care of my grandmother till she was 90. And so I took care of my family. It's just sort of what I did. And I took care of my older sister. We were less than 2 years apart through all the alcoholism. She was the one who was scared. And then like we were so codependent that we didn't fully have full personalities, as children. Like she would be so afraid and worried that I would just shut that part off. I would pretend like I wasn't afraid because she had that covered, and so
Right.
then I had to be the really responsible one that was, but so it really translated unhealthy, as Carol saw, when we became adults. It was the how we survived when we were little.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Well,
then when my grandmother died, like my whole foundation came out from under me. Like I
mhm,
was taking care of my nieces and nephews and they took them away. And I, of course, lost my identity with caretaking my grandmother. And so that's when I also started drinking too much at that point. And so it's been a really rocky road, especially navigating like the marriage with my husband, because I think I kind of did that to him too. Like I
mhm,
needed him to need me.
yeah.
And so, like, understanding that we're two healthy, separate people without feeling so insecure all the time,
Mhm,
has
mhm.
been its own path. And he's very patient. He has his own issues, which I have to let him work on.
Right.
And I don't get to like go in there and fix him like he's a project.
Right.
There,
Right.
look what
Right.
I've done. I have fixed him. That's my work.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's not our job to raise our spouses. I mean, we joke about that. I joke about that with my husband, but it ultimately it's not our jobs. It's our jobs to be I mean, I think a safe place for them to come and express their concerns and work through what they need to and be healthy with boundaries and expectations. But
Right.
there are a lot of things that you just have to figure out on your own. I can't. Hell, I can barely fix me. What makes me think I can fix you?
Right.
Like truthfully.
Well, it's that distraction of hyper focusing on someone else that
Right.
like I spent most of my time avoiding how the
Mhm.
discomfort that I had inside, like
Right.
masking it by working on doing for others.
Right.
And
Right.
so, and then you realize, then you become humble. You're like, well, who am I to fix anybody? Like, I feel like this.
It's very humbling when you have that realization. Just
Yeah.
Zelda, good job on
I
stopping
know.
paying.
I was gonna. I was gonna.
Girl.
I was gonna get
Woo!
Mama's tiara out.
Awesome.
Right. Right.
Let's put on
We
the tiara.
have 3 months.
Woo! That is
3 months.
amazing. Keep it up. So
Yeah,
great.
the tiara comes. Mama's tiara comes out when we have a sober celebration, a clean and sober celebration. Stopped paying bills
Congratulations.
3 months ago. That's huge.
That is.
That's
That is.
huge.
So
Congratulations, Zelda.
so where are you at now? Are you like on the other side of your alcohol and just kind of working on yourself at this point?
Right. I am, easy about like 5 years sober. I drank twice within there. And then my dad, he died of alcoholism. And one of the last
Um,
times I drank was 3 days before he died. And I
okay.
thought about calling him and thought about calling him and I didn't. And I know that it would have ended badly, but that was tough. And we had gone no contact the last year of his life.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was
So
very sad.
right. And so
Mhm.
then like going down there, like I was flying into the life of an alcoholic. And I was like, I can't drink. I can't drink. And like his memorial was at the bar. And so then I was like, I'm not drinking for 3 years because I was having threes. Like I could make it like 3 months, and then I
There
would
you
drink,
go.
and 3 months, and then I would drink. And then I realized like numbers that was going to be 2, 22, 22. I was like, oh, and it's
Hey, good numbers.
it's weird to set those goals. And then when I reached that mark, I was like, now what?
I
And
think
my
it's
husband, yeah, and he's now over a year sober because he kind of followed lead. Like he had stopped drinking more and more, but now Shane hasn't drank. Yeah.
I
So,
didn't realize that. That's
yeah.
amazing.
He didn't tell me for a long time,
Okay.
but he was like, it made an impact because I said, like,
sure.
when is the last time that we haven't drank? Like that, and he was like, probably I was 15 since I went a year without drinking, when he
Oh,
first
wow.
started drinking, because there's always the social reason.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then that's where like two things existing at the same time causes me a lot of discomfort. But, like I can be really proud that I'm sober. And then I can also be angry at the way society sets it up to where you're not living your best life if you're not drinking. I
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
feel angry that I missed my two older boys' 21st birthday. I didn't drink with them. I didn't toast with them.
Mhm.
And, that was triggering for me, especially when Rex turned 21. I was like, he
Yeah.
got all hurt because he was like, my mom was the last one to text me happy birthday. I only know that because his girlfriend told me. But I was like, well, that's because I was struggling with like how to celebrate that
Sure.
milestone. Right. And
Right.
feeling kind of gypped about it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But
Wow.
I
Yeah.
just had to let myself be mad.
Well, and
Sometimes
feel
it's
your
all
feelings.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's not up to anybody else to explain or even validate your feelings. I mean, those are yours, and you do have to feel them. I mean, you do have to kind of sit in them, because if you don't do that, how else are you going to learn how to navigate them?
Right.
How else are you going to know a healthy way to go about that and sorting that out and
Right.
figuring out what that looks like for yourself? Because what that looks like for you is very different than what it looks like for Carol and I, and it doesn't mean it's good or bad. I look at things as healthy and unhealthy. And as long as you're being healthy, you know,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
that's what matters. So what was some of your strategies when you flew into that alcoholic life for that funeral? And I can imagine how that must have been. What was something that you did to help you stay strong in that?
That like I almost felt like I didn't breathe for like 3 days when I
Ugh.
was down there. It sounds crazy, but like I didn't feel like I exhaled.
I
I
bet so.
was
Yeah.
unaware of my eating or lack of eating. Like I
Mhm.
was fending off a lot of people who were accusing me of killing my dad because me going no contact
Oh,
had caused him to die. He couldn't get over that. And like all of that. So it was very confusing and a
And
strange time.
never mind that they didn't know the awful things that he was saying to you.
There's one aunt that he would use her phone. So she knew, but she didn't tell a lot of people. And like I had called him all the time. There's a lot of abuse there because he's an
yeah.
alcoholic and there's just a lot of abuse. And so overcoming that, but I felt like I just really tried to trust my gut.
Mhm.
I'm very hyper vigilant. I'm attuned to like negativity. So I was navigating that way. And that was
Mhm.
kind of keeping me safe,
Mhm.
in some ways. And I do feel like I was possessed by him one time. He had a beef with my uncle, and like they had taken all my grandmother's furniture. Anyways, they had stored some of it at his house, and it was all over this couch. Like me and my sister that were not getting along had a mediated pick split where we picked out his little belongings. And
Mhm.
so in that, I had a little Victorian settee that was like a child's size couch that I picked out for Molly. And then my cousin was like, "Oh, sorry, that's mine." Like picked through my pile and told me. And I was just like, I just walked out and left. I didn't say anything. But then I'm at my cousin's house and I was like, I could not sleep. And I kept just going over and over in my head. I'm sorry if I cuss, but like I almost was like my dad. I was like, F off, Mark. Mark, F off. Like F off. I was just over and over and over. And I'm like, why am I doing this? And like I said, I'm afraid of my anger from my dad being an alcoholic and my
Mhm.
mom being bipolar.
Mhm.
Like I've been afraid to be angry. And I was angry and I was
Yeah.
pacing around the house. And then finally I sat up and I was like, Papa wants me to tell Mark to F off. And like went to sleep. And so then the next day I got up and I was like loading the U-Haul by myself and I picked up that Victorian settee and I was like, F off Mark, and I loaded it in the truck. And it was the quietest F you heard around the world. Like it started a family Facebook group and it like erupted like all over. Like there were lines drawn and like it's
Oh
crazy.
my God. Why
We've
do
never
people
been
get
the
so
same since.
crazy like that over belongings when somebody passes?
Well, yeah. Well, and then the ugliness, like my dad was one of 5 children. Well, when my grandmother died, me and my sister didn't have the money to go down there and they just skipped him. Like as they picked all of her antiques and possessions, they like disinherited him. And my aunt, of course, feels bad about that, but that's why they had so many antiques that they were dumping them off for him to store for 15 years.
Okay.
But again, that's just like he wrote. So when I quit calling him, I'd call him every month and I said, I'm never calling you again. And I didn't. And that was 1 year before he died. Well, that March, he wrote me a hate mail, but he wrote it to my minor children who were like only 4 and 6 at the time. explaining to him who they were. And then he mailed it to my aunt who lives in Arkansas, who she put it in a safety deposit box for a year while he was still alive, and then held on to it for the 8 months after he died, mailed me a photocopy of it for Christmas. I got it Christmas, like the day before Christmas Eve. And she'd also mailed a copy to multiple family members. And Carol, to put it in perspective, like he would live with us for months. My family would rearrange our life. It ended with best regards to your mommy and daddy. That's the only way he addressed Shane and I in the letter that I received from my dead father on Christmas.
My goodness.
Right.
And when that was going on at the time, I didn't have that context that you just put it in.
Right.
Put all of that in.
It was weird. It was weird. So yeah, but she still has the original. Like I got to burn the photocopy, but why not she keep a photocopy and let me think that I burned the original?
Why did he send it to her in the first damn place?
Because she is the most evil person he knows. Like she's the only person that would do that. That's the only thing I can think. Because if he gave it to my other aunt, she would have beat him across the head with it, you know?
Right.
And like, there's no other person, even my mom is not that like together to do something that evil, you know?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, that's diabolical.
It really is. I mean, not to judge your family or your situation, but that is just a
That
very
behavior is diabolical. I can
unkind.
say that, you know, without judging the person.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The whole point would be wanting me to kill myself, you know, like the whole point of that sort of emotional abuse. And then I had family members that had the letter and they were going, well, ask your therapist if it's emotionally abusive. And like, I was going to do it. And then I thought to myself, and I said, no, I don't need to ask anyone.
Right.
That is abuse, you know, 100%.
It doesn't, it can't get any more vile than that as far as like what you can do with words and trying to pit your kids against you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, shrouding, like she was shrouding it as trying to bring the family together too on Christmas, like with this letter from my dead dad, totally blaming me for everything. Well, addressed to my minor children, that was where I was like, no. But,
Yeah.
okay. And in her defense, like understanding where she's coming from, you know, she could never be firm with my dad. His sisters, they were enabling him. They always did. And so she wanted me to take care of him, which that was my plan, was to take care of him, you know? And so, I mean, I wanted that too. It just didn't work out that way. But so she was angry at me and, you know, they were all blaming me for his death. You know, so anyway, but I signed up for that responsibility.
He drank for how many years solid without a break?
He drank since he was probably 14, 15, you know, and then he was getting Catherine and I drunk.
Nothing to do with his death.
Well, that's what I mean. They couldn't like, and that's where I could no longer watch it because it got so bad. Like the deterioration mentally and physically was that bad.
Yeah.
But that's where, in order, you know, we've all done it. In order to not feel guilty, you shame someone else or you put that guilt off on them.
Yes.
Rather than accepting, hey, I watched my baby brother drink himself to death and I never did anything. Oh, I'm going to blame this person, you know?
Yeah.
And that's just a dysfunctional family, you know, which I think we all have, you know, or many of us have our own dysfunction, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, wow. So, and how long ago was that?
That will be 5 years. So he died February 19th, or no, February 22nd, 2019 was when he died. And he was a single dad that got custody of me and my sister. Well, you know, which is odd for way back then anyway, but you know.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there had to have been some red flags that came to the court's attention pretty big to get that in those days.
Well, my mom and dad both lost custody of us for 6 months, and Meemaw had us. And then my dad moved back to New Mexico and then came back and won custody of us. But then, you know, almost like the mommy needs wine culture, he used being a single dad as a reason for drinking a lot, you know.
Yeah.
That's hurtful as a child, to feel responsible for
Wow.
For
Yes.
yeah, I mean, that's a lot to put, and especially to not to grow up in that kind of an environment, and not have the tools that you ever even needed to sort through that. Children would have a difficult time sorting through that in the healthiest of
Right.
relationships. Mom and dad got divorced, and we got taken away, but to then have that put on you, and especially as a little girl, like that's a lot to take on, because
Yeah.
I think
Oh
little
my
girls
God.
kind of
Impossible to take
naturally
on.
feel,
Yeah.
naturally feel a little more empathetic, and boys can be that way too. My son
Right.
is very sensitive and empathetic, and not that he's not, but I think that girls, when it comes to their dads, it's just a different thing, and especially if you're seeking that approval.
Right.
And I'm so sorry that you never got that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a
Oh,
difficult thing. Like, I mean,
right. Well, oddly enough, it didn't do my sister any favors to get the approval.
yeah.
Like we both have like different roads to hoe, but I think that I was scapegoated a lot in my family,
Yeah.
which once I realized that, like, I can handle, being hard on myself. I can handle people being hard on me. I can take the blame where she can't. So like if you can't take, like, that's what sobriety and all of this is about, basically, is accountability,
Mm-hmm.
to ourselves, for ourselves,
Yeah.
and being accountable. I mean, and you can do it for other people, but you really, like we're saying, you have to do it for yourself, and
Right.
anyone has to do it for themselves. But
Yeah.
so she wouldn't you think, Carol, she knows us both. I think she has a harder time with accountability, my sister.
Mhm.
And I feel for them, like all my sisters. I think that I know where they're coming from more than anybody. And I miss those relationships, even though I know they're bad for me,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
because they're familiar and safe.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. You have pulled through so much of that so beautifully, Sarah.
oh, pulling through. It's like a constant, I'm
Yeah.
still working through it, but
No, for real. I mean, you've come a long, long way in that. I mean, it was just a constant thing
right.
that was tormenting you, that was occupying your every
Thought. Right.
waking thought. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and then like I went to Green Shoe, which is funny. I don't know if you guys know what that is. It's sort of based on the Pia Melody model. And I guess I shouldn't laugh, but I told my friends like I hadn't watched anything on the cults or anything. And so I went to Green Shoe and then came back and then we watched a documentary on Nexium.
Oh, lost your audio and video again. Oh,
I'm sure she'll be back in a minute.
I should get out my laptop and do it that way. Anyways, my friends were laughing at me. They were like, because I said, oh my gosh, I could have gone down and like joined a cult. And they were like, don't worry, we had a plan to come get you. And I was like, you guys. But that's what makes us vulnerable to
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, those self-help cults, is because
yeah.
you have to sit with the discomfort. You have to be willing to do something different than what's, automated, programmed in when you've grown up like that. You have to be willing to go and put yourself and trust other people that know things. And so then I laughed and I said, no, if I went down there and it was a cult, I would have been the president of the NWA chapter and you all would be.
Oh, yeah. Zelda says, Sarah, good job, girl. You made it through.
Right.
You really have. You really, really have, Sarah. It's pretty remarkable, the transformation.
Well, I mean, we all are making it through, and that's where it's nice what you're doing here, Carol and Christy, and sharing our stories and just, you know, it's a struggle. I still struggle daily. So.
Absolutely.
Ah, wow.
Yeah.
That's profound. So how is your like as you find you're putting everything back together, because we just talked about cults yesterday and you mentioned it, like spiritually, are you exploring that side of things too through things? And what is this program you went through? Because I don't know what that is. Like,
Okay. Are you familiar with Pia Melody at all, or like the
Mhm.
Meadows? Okay. Well, she wrote like Facing Codependence, and she kind of coined that term. And
Okay.
so Green Shoe is sort of a offspring, like the closest thing to the Meadows would have been all the way in Texas. And I actually found this program by myself, like when we were sitting there, like by trying to, diagnose myself and help myself online.
Right,
I stumbled
right.
across, and so like everybody's been referred by their therapist, and I'm like, oh, I just like found it.
Well, hey,
But
it was meant for you to find.
right. And a lot of it is and a lot of people there did have religious trauma. That's what,
Mhm.
and I feel very fortunate that that wasn't an aspect to my upbringing, and
Right.
me and Carol have talked a lot about that. Like, I don't feel like I was ever traumatized. So it's easier for me, or not easier, but to have a connection to a higher power,
Sure.
or to not
Yeah.
feel
A lot of the baggage is not there. That's
right,
Right.
yeah.
right,
Right. Right.
'Cause, yeah, it's hard to sort through all that.
right. And then the shame and the fear that comes from
Mhm.
that, is profound. And so I witnessed that going through the program, and that, was
Mhm.
interesting. And the people that I met were lifelong friends, like
Aw.
it's sort of like going to war together.
Well, yeah, like literally,
Right,
war for your sanity and your life. I mean, yeah,
right.
that's a
Right.
very fair comparison.
So it was interesting. And it's a good program. It's in Oklahoma, and
Okay.
it's completely free. Like you have to put up, some money to get registered, and then it's a week program. I think they're getting a larger like farm facility too, where they have animal therapy and that kind of stuff.
Oh,
Wow.
nice.
It's
Yeah.
Nice.
all about like, giving the shame back, and,
Yeah.
taking acceptance for, your codependence mainly. Like I think a lot of people there are codependent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have, I see a lot of crossover in people who have drug and alcohol addictions or eating disorders like I had, or, I mean, there's a lot of crossover that I think sometimes you don't think about. And but I think everybody has those codependent.
Right. That external validation. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard not to in this
Yeah.
society, and regardless of how you grew up or how amazing things were. Like, there's just a lot of things put on
Well,
everybody.
and how would we not, just the very nature of being an infant,
Right.
you are learning to navigate and gauge the world around you by
Mhm.
the person that's taking care of you and their responses to it.
Mhm.
Right.
So it's
Mhm.
very deeply ingrained from the word go,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
and that's pretty powerful stuff. So it's
Mhm.
I don't see it not being part of the battle.
True.
Mhm. Mhm.
Ugh. Well, and
Mhm.
then as parents, that's another important thing. Like, as you're talking about, like what we're talking about is about healing our inner child, and that kind of
Mhm.
work.
Mhm.
Or I don't know if you're
Mhm.
familiar with the parts program where there's parts of ourselves, but so that inner child work, it's hard to do that work as a parent and then not be like, oh my gosh, I've so profoundly messed up my children.
I have told all of my children, because when I started doing my inner child work, I was kind of like, "What? My childhood was great. What are you talking about? No, no, no." And then, some of the stuff that I'm actually working through right now, goes back to, talking about like religious things and things that were put on you, untangling that, untangling who I am. But as I'm doing that, I'm calling my daughters and, like, I am so sorry. If you ever need to call me and yell at me, you will not hurt my feelings. Like if your therapist needs to set something up, not that they have
Right.
therapists or anything, but like seriously, I tell me what I need to apologize for, because you do have that realization then at some point where you're like, oh, okay, and but I think as a parent, the other side of that, the healthy side of that, is healing that in yourself and saying to your children, look, I screwed this up, and in the process I probably screwed you up, and I didn't do it intentionally, but this is what it was, and let me explain it, and I'm here. And I think that is a profound gift. So as you heal yourself and work on that inner child, which is icky, messy,
Right.
heavy stuff, but again, you're setting an example that healing is good, and you're never too old to start, you're never too young to try. And it's and I think as women, just even for our daughters, like showing them, okay, this is what it looks like. Or in the case of your husband, showing your husband, being that example. You can really pull somebody up just by being a good example, because people then in a healthy way want you to be proud of them, and they want to be a better person for you. And I don't think, as long as it's healthy, I don't
Right.
think that's a bad thing. I mean, not codependent, but
Right. Well, it's so hard to know like when to stand up for yourself. And I was actually, Carol called before that, and I was like, because I'm in this situation where, yeah, I probably should stand up for like what's right or wrong. But then I've been, told that I'm wrong so much and all of that, that it's hard to advocate for yourself and know like what's appropriate and what's not. And then as far as my kids go, I have thought about that. I'm like, I'll just give them what I still want from my mom, and
Yeah.
that's validation that whatever they experienced is theirs. And, I most certainly could have done better. And now that I know better, I am trying to do better. And that's what we
Yeah.
do as we go. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I had something to say about standing up for yourself. You know, you can trust your instincts. There's going to be a lot of voices that oppose what your instinct is trying to tell you, but you can trust your instinct. They're there for you to trust, and you have them. You have those instincts. And so if you just go with what your instinct is, go with what your gut says,
right.
that's your compass.
yeah.
Regardless of the outcome, trusting your gut is always a good thing to do.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard, like that's hard to trust your gut. Well, and that's something that actually I learned about Green Shoe is they put you in your body. Like, of course you have to talk about your feelings, but then they want you, where are you feeling it in your body,
Right.
So
Okay.
that way you understand like what your anxiety feels like and where you actually feel it physically. And then like labeling it in that respect, like I feel tight in my chest or like in my throat, that helps you understand more, what emotion you're feeling as you sit with it, because so
Yeah.
much of it is not being able to feel those feelings and not being able to trust ourselves or, so.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think that's what intuition goes back, like we were talking about yesterday. This ties in so much to yesterday. If you don't trust yourself, how can you trust what is being told to you, what your body's feeling? Because if you've always been told you were wrong. And so I think a lot of people who, are learning how to step into their intuition and step into their personal power and step into all of these things, it's the core is learning to trust yourself, learning to know that you really know what's going on with your body, and you might not be able to put it into words, but you feel it. And like yesterday, that gentleman that we listened to the audio of, his intuition literally saved his life. My intuition literally saved my life.
Yeah.
Like, there it is there. And it's not going to steer you wrong when you get in your own head. And
That's
we
true.
all do. We all do that.
We all do. Oh my God.
No one is above it. I want to say, for anybody who is, now this is more of like a spiritual kind of hippy dippy thing, but there's a book that I'm reading and it's called Personal Power Through Awareness. And it's amazing. And it's a book on taking on other people's energies, feeling that energies. How do you process that? How do you clear it? How do you release it? How does it look to yourself? Really, really good book. If you're not into the whole energy thing, it's not going to be up your alley. But if you are, or you believe energy is a good thing, it's amazing. You should check it out.
I'm definitely into the energy aspects of it, and
you would love this book. Then it's by Sonia Roman. I think it's like $14, and then in the back, it's got a chapter and that's got like a little worksheet. You're gonna. I love me a good worksheet, worksheet, and a good wig. Those are the things I love in life. But it's really helpful to just help you realize, and talking about energy, your chakras and all of those centers and where that energy is and how it feels. And it's like why sometimes we can't say something because we can't verbalize it. Our throat gets tight and it's locked, stuck in it, and it can't come out. Or that's why your chest will get tight.
Yeah.
And I've had times before where I had an issue with a friend, and it was just my chest was so tight, and I started thinking, I just dropped into my body, and I was like, is this the right situation? And the more I thought about staying in the situation, the tighter my chest got. Then when I breathed and I thought about leaving the situation, it started releasing.
Okay.
And that's how you can know, like, if it starts to get really tight, you're like, okay, that's not cool. That's not okay. Like, this person could be your best friend in the whole wide world for years and years and years. And, but if it's not a good situation, if it's not a healthy situation. So I think there's a lot to that, and to inner child work and to looking back at your childhood. I think that helps you untangle so much. And there's so much as we get older that there is to untangle. You don't think about it, but then when you sit down and you start writing stuff out, or you start looking at it, or journaling, or automatic writing, or whatever you do, however that looks, you're like, oh wow. And how
do we have enough time? You're like, I should have started this sooner. No.
Right? Like, I'm kind of old at this point. Am I ever going to get there?
But then you have to be like, well, I needed a new hobby. And then my daughter, she's always telling me what the new saying is. And I like this one. It says, I'm doing it for the plot. At first, okay, so that's sort of like your YOLO or whatever, you only live once. But I like it doesn't attach any positive or negative connotation to it.
Wow.
Right.
Right. I like that.
I do too.
That's great.
And then, like, we've talked about it before, Carol, like if you use pain as, somewhere to like labor pain to get through something, to progress, pain for progress, but then becoming that and like letting it embody you and become your personality,
Right.
like that's what happened to my dad. He was so ate up with like the anger and that victim mentality and the unfairness of life. And that's what we're talking about right now. If you don't do the work, then you just become more and more bitter.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And it gets harder to do it, because you really dig in.
Right.
I'm doing it for the plot. Yes, Zelda. Yes. I'm going to write that down because I'm going to use that at some point.
Right. I find I'm using it all the time. Like when I can't, I'm like, am I making the right decision? I'm like, I'm doing it a lot,
or hey, I'm doing it for the plot twist. Like, what's coming up next?
This is go great in my memoirs.
Exactly.
Indeed. Oh man, I love that.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
And then that helps you try hard things too, like because doing it for the plot.
Surely not, Zelda.
No.
Surely not. You're not on your last chapter. Come on. The best is yet to come.
Right.
Make it a good one. We never.
Yeah.
And then sometimes the people that say, "Oh, it's all just a simulation." Even if it's a simulation, do it for the plot.
Right. Right. Yeah. 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 Throw a monkey wrench in the matrix. Let's just see.
Right.
My husband's always talking about that. He's like, "Oh, it's the Matrix." I'm like, "Yeah, Well, throw a wrench in that. Let's recorrect."
And that could be true. I can't barely work on my own stuff that I can't think that big picture, you know?
Oh, I mean, I can a little bit, but there's some times where I just look at him and I'm like, "Is that what you think? Is that what we're going with today?" Like, do we need to get out the tinfoil hats? Like, oh man, some of the stuff he comes up with sometimes you just really, you do. You're like,
Do you have a blue roof? I'm just kidding.
no, but we almost had a blue porch. So like that. Are you talking like haint blue, like that blue protective kind of thing?
Right. Well, that's the houses with blue roofs didn't burn in Hawaii.
Right. Right.
Oh,
That's
oh.
That's the thing here in Appalachia. They call it haint blue, and you're supposed to paint. That's why you see a lot of those old Southern porches that have blue roofs, like on the inside of their porches,
Right.
supposed to keep the spirits away because, there was so much trauma on the land and everything down here as opposed to other places, that it's supposed to keep them away. So it's a real thing. And
That
that's why
oh,
you see that. Yeah, yeah. Because when I got here, I was like, "What's with the blue porches?" And some people just kind of passed it off, and then I was like, "Could we do a blue porch? We could do Tiffany blue. That would be really pretty. Could we pull that off?" We couldn't. Not on my porch. We couldn't pull it off. So I didn't get a blue porch, but
my kids friends that are like, "We're getting a blue roof." I'm like, "That's how they're going to locate you." They're like a oil hat on your house.
That's awesome.
Oh.
Oh, how funny. How funny. Well, that your story is amazing. Like you really seem like you have come through a lot and are very like grounded and just very, well thought out in where you are and how you see things. Like that's very beautiful. It's encouraging.
Yeah.
Thank you. I
Mhm.
feel like I think you maybe mentioned it, like Carol, or you can say it, you can learn it, like I can study
Mhm.
about it, but it's so much
Mhm.
harder to apply,
Yeah. Yeah.
or to soothe those feelings of discomfort. And, what you're talking about, energy, like I could see myself easily becoming a hermit because going out, I'm very sensitive to all the energies. of people out there.
It
Yeah.
it can be tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never would have pegged myself as somebody who would be at risk for agoraphobia, but
Mhm.
like just like a couple of months ago, I kept watching the food supply dwindle,
Right.
in all the places that you open for the food supply.
Uh-huh.
And like and one day I walked through and I realized that I was no longer going to get away with not doing something about restocking.
Oh,
And I almost had a panic attack right
mm,
then and there.
mm.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I gotta go cheap something.
Okay. And I mean, it was stark. And I just was like, uh-oh, I need to deal with this.
Right.
Which is and so that's when I started looking into, doing stuff like this and getting back into some kind of something that has to do with recovery and
Social.
yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
because I realized that that's a real danger for me
right.
because I am sensitive to that stuff, you know.
Yeah. To being attuned to other people's emotions. And
Mhm.
then read that book about letting it go. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, it's like somatic work. And did I tell you the story about my hip recently? Like, there's this one video where, which way is the kid swinging? Sort of like which color is the dress? And I could see the dress both colors, but I could only see the kid swinging one way, like towards the building anyway. And they could see it the other way or whatever. So then having my reality questioned, like was so triggering for me.
Ooh.
And I was like, and even Shane was like, why is this so upsetting to you? There's this video of this kid swinging, and they were like, which way is the kid swinging? You know?
Uh-huh.
And you could see it both ways, but I only saw it one way. And then being told that I was seeing it wrong, or like having my reality questioned, was like so triggering for me. And I feel
Oh, yeah.
that, like, Shane was like, why are you so upset? And then I was like, because I was always told I was wrong and how I felt was wrong, you know, and it's like all this emotional stuff. And then I'm like in the process of cooking dinner, immediately, like my body confirmed or validated how I was feeling. Like my hip quit working. I was like, ouch, 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 I couldn't walk.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
wow.
I know. And that's where like that somatic or that energy work that you're talking about, I'll have
Mhm.
to read into that, because that is so
Yeah.
true. Like that stored energy and that frustration and trying to deal with that, like, was terrible, you know?
Well, and like you said, when you are constantly told you're wrong, it is very triggering to have, as you're starting to work through that, to have anything come back,
Yeah.
because it's almost like you have to prove to yourself that you are as smart as you know you are. At least that's how it is for me.
Right.
It's like when someone, because when I was in, a pretty, emotionally abusive relationship, um, yeah, I couldn't think I could do anything right. And so then for the longest time, it's like I had to prove to myself that I was right. And it's not that I was trying to prove it to everybody else. I was really trying to prove it to myself. And the more somebody questioned it, the louder that I got, because then I wasn't feeling heard.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it is very triggering. And to this day, and that was 10 years ago or more that happened. And to this day, I still really have problems with that. It's one of the things my husband says to me all the time. He's like, hey, not that person, slow down. But I don't think sometimes some of that it's very difficult to get past.
Right. Well,
It really is.
to validate, like, hey, how I experience things is my reality. That's also the interesting thing, is under
Right.
all get to have our own reality, you know?
Yes. Yes.
Like,
And
I was gonna say, like, there's facts, but then our experiences are our own. And like a fact that
Mhm.
me and Carol got C's on the test. Well, her C might
Mhm.
mean that she's great in math, where for me, my truth might be that I'm terrible, that I failed. You know? The
Right.
facts are we both got a C, but our experience or our truth is very different. And
Yes.
like that's
Mhm.
being able to hold space for my experience being valid without having to
Mhm.
bounce it off of other people. Like I got, so that's that external validation, like I'm okay, right? Validate me, I'm okay, when my thinking is right,
Mhm.
right? But being gaslit or being told, hey, it's not that bad, you're not, what you're experiencing is a lie, you know da, da,
Mhm.
da, was so triggering that it was just interesting the way, like, almost immediately I couldn't walk. The next day I was fine. I
Yeah.
have to go to the chiropractor. Ow, ow, ow.
Right. Well, and that's all of that, in your body. I mean, it really does take a lot to kind of just clear out that old, because it changes you on a molecular level. Like it literally, like they've proven narcissistic abuse or abuse of any kind literally rewires your brain,
Right.
and what I equate it to is, you take an ice cube, and then you melt it down, and then you put it in the river, and then you try to form it back into an ice cube, and it's going to be dirty, and it's not going to be the same, and you're never going to get that original ice cube back.
Right.
And it's always going to have those little bits and pieces that are, and no matter what you do, it's it's always going to be there. And that's why, I'm thankful for my husband, because he sees it. He's like, oh, she's triggered. And a lot of times it's not even like he's not triggering at all, but it is definitely different. But look into that book, because I think it will help you. And especially energy is like when you go out, if you can protect yourself, or even, I don't know if you know anything about Reiki, but,
Right. Oh
even
yeah.
like Reiki, clearing yourself when you get home, like, I do that. or even just like I have a bell outside my door. It's like a decorative bell. It's a really pretty door, but I ding it 3 times before I walk through the door into my house to break up the energy and send it away.
That's great.
And
Well,
my neighbors always know when I'm home. Like I could never sneak in, you know.
Will wind chimes do the same thing?
Anything, yep, anything that breaks up, because the whole theory behind it is anything that is noise is going to break it up and send it out. So that's like why, you know, like a drum beat, music, a bell, stomping your feet,
right. Okay.
anything like that,
And like that
you know.
somatic work has a lot to do with the hips and is about like releasing that stored trauma and energy on how
Mhm.
we change our physical makeup, like you said, or
Right.
and rewiring those neural pathways. You know, that
Hmm.
like repeated. It's sort of like if you've taken a path, beat down, you know, then it's easier to stay on that path. And I was thinking, you know, the other day it was really foggy and driving to work. You're more comfortable on the roads that you have memorized. And
Right.
that and so that when you're triggered, it's like a big fog.
Mhm.
You can't see. I can't see.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
so then you want to walk that familiar path, and that's
Mhm.
oftentimes not the one that you need to be on.
That's so
Well,
true.
and going back to the DBT training that we talk about a lot, you know, logical mind, wise mind, emotional mind, you know, when you get triggered, it throws you into that emotional mind. I mean, it doesn't just drop you, it picks you up and, you know, drop kicks you into it.
Yeah.
And, you know, just like today, again, talking to my husband, and he's like, you know, he's really having a rough day. He's like, I just want to change it all. I want to uproot it, and I want to do that. And I'm like, whoa, whoa. Like, we don't make big decisions when we're emotional, because those are bad decisions. They're not decisions based in logic or reality or practicality. You know, that's when people end up broke and living in a box on the side of the road. But, you know, but you do. And I think one of the things is to know that, uh, knowing, I'm trying to figure out how I want to say it, just knowing that that is the case for you is so important. You know, being like, okay, this is my trigger. I can't control it. It's going to happen to me, but this is where it is. This is where it comes from. This is why. And, you know, and then you do breath work or
Whatever.
light a candle or do yoga or whatever you do, pray, read your Bible. Like, it doesn't, there's no right or wrong answer, but whatever you do to get through that moment. But even just knowing what it is really important, because then it
Absolutely.
means that you're not insane. Like, you didn't make that up
Thank
in your
you.
head. Like,
Yes.
Right.
it is validation that, no, this is a real thing. This really happened to you. This has happened to a lot of people. And, you know, unfortunately, it's happened to so many that we have lots of books on it. And here you go, you know. But it does give you a little bit of normalcy.
Right. And we
It did.
we all need those books, but it's weird when you're in that animalistic or that triggered state, you know, not and sometimes I'm like, is that the best I'm gonna get? Is, oh look, there I am. I'm doing it again, you know. Awareness. Oh look at me, you know. But that it has to start with awareness. Like, you can't change anything until you are aware that you're doing it, you know, and then you stand the chance of stopping it or making another conscious choice. But maybe your husband's just doing it for the plot.
Yeah, I mean, well, I tell you what, my husband's plot is a little.
I know. Anything
But you know,
unsafe, I would lose it probably.
oh gosh, oh you know, he wants to go, like, go off the grid and you know, build a Quonset hut bunker in, yeah, I mean,
This is
no, it's
rational to me right now.
you're like, hey, that's a good idea. Let's do that. You know, and see, and I'm very logical, and he has a more emotional reaction, whereas I'm more like, oh, okay, let's think this through. You know, if it were just left up to my husband, God knows where we'd be right now. We would not be at a house in Kentucky. We would probably be in a tent in Alaska.
Like, we've got 3 months of beans and rice. We're good.
Yeah, or he would just be like, "Well, we can forage. I can learn to hunt." Like, that's a great idea. Let's do that. But but what I was gonna say is like, but think of how far you've come, like what a step that is to even acknowledge that you have an awareness that this is a trigger for you. It doesn't matter that you don't know how to process it right now or you're learning how to do that. There was a time in your life when you didn't even know that was a thing.
Right.
And you have come so far to to know that.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that that is really important. And I think a lot of times, we have to kind of look at, I like to do like this snowball thing, like look at the small victories first and really celebrate those. And then pretty soon you've got this big victory that you didn't know you had. But the small ones are so important
Yeah.
because it's just you unclogging your mind.
Right. Well, and there's something like, ignorance is bliss. They always say that. And then sometimes I look back and I'm like, my childhood I didn't think was that bad. But of course, as a kid, you can't accept the reality for what it is.
No.
Because
And you
Right.
can't gauge it by anything because it's the only reality that you had at the time.
your
Yeah.
mind is so powerful on how it protects you.
Yeah.
And slowly, like the things that were super unhealthy that, I'd said to my husband, and then I apologize about it. It took like years for me to even realize what I said. I don't know if that makes
Mhm.
sense. Like
Yeah.
we never got along with my sister, but me and her had an incredibly unhealthy relationship. And, I didn't understand that dynamic. And one time I said, look, if you were both drowning, I would save her. Anyway, so wrong, so wrong. I was
I mean, but no,
I was trying to
depending on the way.
so wrong. So wrong. I was
I mean, but no, depending on the way.
so wrong. So wrong. I was
I mean, but no, auto review.
Steve, have you got something going? Have you got the program going? Please silence your YouTube.
Auto review.
Please. Yes. There.
I can hear y'all.
Okay, good.
Okay.
I have a couple of pin messages here that I wanted to read out. Megan says, "Hi, ladies. Nice to meet you, Sarah. Somebody's got something going that's causing an echo. Please make it stop." Do you have the YouTube program going, Steve? I'm hearing that echo. Hello? Okay. Still going. Can we see you? Steve, can you hear me? Steve,
Yes.
can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Have you got your YouTube still playing in the background?
No.
Okay. Well, I don't hear the echo anymore. Sorry, that was making me a little nutsy.
Yeah. It was very squirrely.
I slept like 5 afternoon. When you get home from the hospital, you're just so beat and worn out, and I just was I slept right through 5:40.
That's all right. You needed to sleep. Well, anyway, the starred messengers are, "Hi, ladies," and Megan says, nice to meet you, Sarah." And then we have a new person, Clyde Romeo, and he says hello.
Hi.
We say welcome. Thank you for being here.
I'm glad you're here.
Hi, Sarah.
Megan.
Hi.
Megan said, moving on from a stage from feeling bad for reflecting on an old reality, not knowing it was all we ever knew at one time. How long do we heal and accept that? I think depending on how serious it was, you could spend the rest of your life healing from it. It just it just depends on the work that you need to be you've got to do. Did that?
I feel it's a lifelong thing for me. I think I'll And I do feel stronger in my footing, but it's really, profound to realize how much of like my life was built out of sticks, or even like, somebody else's sticks or versions of me. And then me trying to even understand myself, like, what do I like when I deferred so much of who
Mhm.
I was to other people and got validation from doing to them. Like, I feel like there's a whole getting to know me where, and then I felt tremendous guilt, like even trying to figure out what I liked. Like, how do I know if I like this? Well, if I spend the money on it, like there's a lot of financial abuse in my, like, so money, we have a lot of money issues, me and my sisters. Some of them are
Mhm.
bad with it, like however it translated, it's all, whatever,
Mhm.
from how we were raised. But like being like, it's okay. Like you have to buy the thing to see if you like it.
Mhm.
You have to do this. Something as small as getting my nails done. Like I would just tear at my cuticles until they bled.
Mhm.
And that was partly an OCD thing, but it was also just a way of handling, like constantly tick, tick, tick. I never thought I would get over that. Like I did EDMR to get over that. And then like getting my nails done made it
Mhm.
to where I don't have to do it because it's all sort of an OCD thing and they're smooth. And so then I felt guilt, like, oh, I shouldn't be spending this money on myself. Da, 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 da. You know, you have to be like, then I would justify it. Well, I'm not drinking, and so I'm saving this.
I had a lot of financial abuse in my with my ex-husband, and I was the same way, and that was a huge trigger for me, and it was one of the things Michael and I fought the most about, because he would just ask. He would be like, okay, I sent you X amount of dollars, like where did the money go? Not like coming at me, just what'd you spend it on? What did the bills cost? And man, you want to talk, we joke around. I have an inner hobbit. I've got hobbit rage. You would see that full force. Like, I mean, not even pretty. Like, I think there's cute hobbit rage, and then there's like brutal. I turn into like, Gollum and Precious. And like, but it was very real to me because my whole married life, I just didn't have that, and it is a process to go through.
Yeah.
It's a process to go through, to allow yourself, to give yourself the permission to feel that way. And now I tease him when he calls. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Spending your money," But it took time. It really took
Right.
time for me to get to the point. And it really just took him saying, "Look, I'm not mad, but I just need to know what things are." And I really had to understand in my head, he can't give me enough money to pay all the bills if I don't tell him what the bills are.
Right. Well,
You
and I've
know,
ruined family vacations when we had the money, because I'm so concerned. Like, it's not even about having the money or spending the money. Like, there's so much trauma there. And then I'm the reverse. I can like try to make my husband justify, well, where did it go? And then like I have to step back and be like, hey, you're out of line. Like, I mean, there's one way of asking, and then like, I mean, I can ruin lots of things, for myself.
Could you guys catch me up in one sentence? What kind of trauma are we dealing with?
Um, I think mainly we're talking about codependence.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
like
And
validation, external validation.
negative thoughts too,
Right.
just the self-talk that's negative that we do
Yeah.
almost automatically.
Right. Like it started with like validation from external forces opposed to like validating yourself is where I think we were started from.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm caught up. Cool.
Learning to navigate with emotional baggage, Megan says. The first year of recovery is hard, but I'm trying. Megan, keep trying.
Right.
Keep
Right.
on going. And
Mhm.
congratulations for getting this far. In fact, you
Yes.
get Mama's tiara.
Ding, 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 ding.
Woo!
Yeah, Shane and I just celebrated 23
Royal
years.
wave.
And somebody said the first 25 years are the hardest. I was like, that's
Nah. Well,
I'm on year 29 and I don't know about that. Yeah, it feels like it's been a rougher ride lately than it was the first 25.
Right. Well, I don't think you ever, that's where like you're just back on that same road again sometimes, you know?
yeah.
And I try to look at it as like a circling up a mountain rather than going in a circle itself. Sort
Mhm.
of like, you're still going somewhere. Just sometimes you're revisiting what you've already learned and you're like, I'm back here again. I thought I learned that.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a frequent occurrence.
Yeah. What I say is life is lived in the valleys and celebrated on the mountaintops. You're always going to have valleys. You're always going to have mountaintops. However low the valley is how high the mountaintop is going to be. Might take you a while to get there, but enjoy it when you get there. And it's a lot of, sometimes it's peaks and valleys, and sometimes it's little hills. And we've been through times where it was huge,
And
but
to piggyback onto that, nothing grows on the peak; it all grows in the valley. So that's where all your growth happens is when you're in the valley, because when the peak is nothing but snowy stone. The valley is where all the green, lush growth happens.
All the dirt's been coming in for centuries, millennia,
yeah.
and all the rain's been flowing in, and all the melted snow melts down into. Yeah, makes sense.
And then whether you're on a path
getting hit with that as you're going up
driving, the view's the same. Like depending on, sometimes you're like really up rocky terrain, the view's the same. Or you take a tram.
Yeah. Well, and my husband was talking to my daughter, and he said, he goes, some of your mom's favorite memories that she talks about the most was when we struggled the most. He's like, she's got more stories about sharing $5 Taco Bell cravings boxes because we were so broke. That's what we had to do. Like, and we were excited. We were excited to split that burrito and split that taco. Like, that was the best thing ever. But, he said it to encourage her. I thought it was really sweet, but he said it to encourage her. He's like, look, the things your mom remembers is not me, like going out and buying her this amazing convertible car. It's, hey, remember the time the Jeep broke down? We had to walk 2 miles in the rain and someone thought you were a homeless dude following me. That's the stories I remember.
Oddly enough, I just found a journal that somebody gave us when we were married, and I only put 2 entries in it, and both of them were about flat tires. And how we recovered from that,
Right?
I was like, how hilarious. I need to write another one. I was like, we need to go have a flat tire or something. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, but it does, and it really makes you appreciate it. And then, you look back and you're like, is it really, I mean, and that's kind of how I look at things now. Is it really that bad? I mean, are we living in a tent in Anacortes, Washington, paying quarters to take showers, eating once a day?
Right.
So, when you look at it, like, it's not as bad as it seems.
Well, and then also life isn't that checklist. Like, happiness is the inside work, and then success is the outside achievement. And so it's just, it's me reminding myself of that, like, because I think life is a checklist. Oh, when only we have our house, then I'll be happy. When there's this, then I'll be happy. When there's this, then I'll be happy. And as you have that and you're not happy, then you're like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Like, why am I not happy? My son is very much like that right now, where he's like, if I get the girlfriend, then I'm happy. If I, like, he has this, and he looks at his brother and he's like, he has it all, and I'm like, no, he still has his own problems, because life is not that checklist,
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, you don't know what somebody had to do or gave up or sacrificed to get that expensive car or that beautiful home or, whatever, because everything does come at a cost. Everything costs. And I always try to keep that in mind when I see, somebody who's got, something that I would like to have. It's like, but what did it cost them? Do I really want it? And what did it cost them?
Well, and that's the worst form of projection that we do, is when we jealousy, like we're projecting what we want onto
Yeah.
someone else. They might not even want it.
Right.
Or it might not even be making them happy. They wish they didn't have it. It's a burden, but we're like, oh, if only I had that. Like
Right.
that's a reminder for me, like when I feel jealous or envy, when I see something, I'm like, oh, I want that so bad. I'm like, well, that at least, like I said, getting to know myself, that clues me in on what I might like. Well, maybe I want that. I don't know. Yeah.
Right. Right. Now, I can tell you, I definitely want the Louis Vuitton shoes. I really don't care that they cost $1,500.
Right.
I want those. Now, how long am I going to have?
Me too.
Right? I think you would look great in red bottoms. My
I'm
husband just
totally lost.
We all are. I think that's what we're
Yes.
getting at.
Yes.
And we're all just trying to find our way, but it's hard to know what you want as, well, let's see what she says. As you get older, you want relationships more than stuff. This is true.
This is true.
I think, that was in like Steve Jobs's thing. He said, of course, his kids, nobody was at his deathbed. And he
Right.
said he like nobody at their deathbed wishes they worked more,
Mhm.
Like,
Wow.
oh.
Oh, wow. Oh,
But then in our case, like I have to go no contact with my mom and my sisters. And so it sounds terrible, but sometimes like I have a much better relationship with my dad now that he's dead, And sometimes I look forward to that with my mom, I'm like, well, when she's dead, we can have a good relationship. And I have to deal with not being mad at myself for feeling that way, because right now I'm vulnerable to wanting to reach out or for things to be different. And that's just not the case. Like,
well, I'll tell you something. Just from the outside looking in, I see that you have a better relationship with yourself, not having a relationship with that.
right. Well,
With
I
what
even
came
stand a
with
chance
that.
I even stand a chance of knowing myself, I certainly like could not even love or like myself and be in relationship with them,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I would have to believe that I was this horrible person that I wouldn't want to be,
That's right. That's right. You would.
Well,
And you
when I
did
was
that.
when I
You
was
beautifully did
drinking,
that for a long time.
when I was drinking, I loathed myself, and it's so hard to love others when you loathe yourself.
right.
Yeah.
I don't know if that fits in anywhere with what we're talking about.
100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right in line with what, you'll have to go back and listen to the first part because what I read from the Smart Handbook.
I will.
Yeah.
Well, it feels selfish, to love yourself. Like part of that, codependence is it feels wrong to love yourself. And so, but you don't realize how selfish it is to put like your validation or your need for approval onto other people.
Right.
So, I mean, it's rewiring the way you think, and realizing, no, like the whole thing, put your oxygen mask on first or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, how selfish that feels, when you have a child or somebody else, but then that's just distracting from the real work that you need to do,
Right.
and loving yourself. And then, like you said, Steve, when you loathe yourself, you can't offer love to anybody else,
Right. 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 I think that's the most important thing.
You can't pour from an empty cup. All of the
All of
things.
those things are,
Well, but they're true.
yeah.
There are.
It may be cliche, but too bad. Cliches are mostly true.
Mhm.
I've found.
Mhm. Yeah.
They exist because they're true.
That's right.
Mhm.
And maybe that's what pisses us off about them is because they are true.
Well, and again, like, but sometimes it's, I think Christy, you were saying about so many books being written on it,
Yeah.
but there could be so many more, because sometimes it's the way that somebody says it that finally gets you to understand it, because we've all heard them and it's their cliche and you're like, oh, da, da, da. But then somebody can say it in a way that you're like, oh, I
Yep.
get it now. I get it.
Yes. Well, and I think that's why, we need everybody's gifts and energy, because, we can all be positive and encouraging, but the way I'm positive and encouraging is different from the way each one of you are different. And like you said, someone might really resonate with that. So I think go be your awesome self. Go conquer your world, because we need your light. We need you, and we need your light, because
There you
it's
go.
unique.
Yeah, it's really hard to go no contact. And Carol knows that with your brother, like family dynamics are so painful, and then I don't know, there's that one saying about journaling, like I've lost touch with so many versions of myself. Yeah.
Man, I stumbled onto something deep today.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to come into the middle of this one.
Yeah.
It's probably how they all are, but especially this one.
Yeah. Well, and I think, when you go no contact with family, my husband's done that. It's hard because there's a lot of guilt that you feel. I think initially with it, there's a lot of like failure. I'm not saying he felt those things, but I know a lot of other people who have. But the moment you open that door, even just a little bit, then it's just like all of that comes rushing back in. And he, when his mom passed, he didn't go to her funeral. He didn't go to his sister's funeral. Like just he couldn't.
Oh, I will be there. And I'm just kidding. I'm going to say everything I want. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I did tell him that when his mom, she was dying, and I said, you need to say everything to her, like whether you say, say it to her when she can still hear it, and say everything. And I don't know what he said, but he said it all. And when it was time for her funeral, we were driving from Montana down to Colorado or somewhere. I'm not sure where we were, like traveling somewhere. But I wasn't speaking to his family either. And I'm like, you can drop me off at the coffee house. I'll drink coffee. You go do. He's like, I don't have anything I need to say.
That's good.
And but it took him a long time to get there. But I do think, that it's tough. And especially when there's abuse there, as a child.
Right.
I'm learning that the lens that people see life through when there's that is instead of like I picture life's lenses as kaleidoscopes. Like mine is like all of these bright colors, and there's a few little gray spots in there, but for the most part, it's all bright colors. I know people who have gone through some pretty traumatic abuse, and theirs is like black and gray and blacked out, and it's a very different way to see life. And just being able to hold space and try, like you might not fully understand how it is, but just being there for somebody in those times, I think is really some of the best love you can give somebody. And you don't even have to say anything, just
That's
be
true.
there.
Be present. Right.
Yeah. I think there's something to do that.
Oh, I had to allow myself to just do whatever I wanted when my dad died. Like there was so much judgment on me that, I was just, and then for a long time, like I had a to-go urn, and he drove around in his beer koozie. It was his cruisy. And like, I would sometimes like get into it with him and like.
Aww.
She always cuts out at the best times.
I know.
That's right, Zelda.
Yeah.
Is Sarah new?
There.
Sarah. Sarah's been here. She's one of the first people I did this meeting with.
Oh, okay.
She's been really busy with her business recently.
Right. Yes. So I've been doing things that are scary, doing it for the plot. And so I've been busy, but I'm going to try to prioritize doing this for sure more. Yeah. I probably will have to go because everybody's calling right now. Everybody needs something. And then that's, where you have to set those boundaries. And that's where I'm not good at setting boundaries,
The first thing to that is realizing that you've a right to them.
Right. Right.
That's the first part. That's the first step.
But
Oh.
anyways, I would spread my dad out on the road. Like at first I was very like it was emotional for me to have his ashes, but then I like started refilling them and like just like sprinkling him out on the street. Like, a gas station when we got in a fight and I almost left him between New Mexico and here. I was like, here, I'm gonna leave you right there. And so a lot of people think it's terrible. And like, I mean, he's gotten to many places. I've sent him to France. He's in Utah. Like, he's in Costa Rica.
There you go. Hey.
How are you doing all this? I'm curious.
Well, I sent him to France with Grace, and then Grace actually still has him in a makeup container there. And I was like, oh my God, you're supposed to spread his ashes. And he was like, she's like, well, where do I spread him? And I go, spread him where you walk the dog. There's this beautiful vista, and that's where all the kids go to drink beer. Or if you want to make a big production out of it, take him to Paris and then wash him down the drain with a Heineken. You know, like
I love it.
this is where he wants to be. But yeah, I mean, I'm not driving around with him, but I did for a long time. And I caught flack for it, or some people told me it was weird and
Who
wrong.
cares?
Yeah, right. You just have to we made jewelry out of him. Like some of my family members thought it was really weird. I had a friend who blows glass and they were like, oh, so it's like a burnt whistle stick. I was like, yeah, sort of. It's a hat pin.
All right, I just might stumble back out of this.
It'll make sense if you start from the beginning.
Yeah,
Like,
you're gonna have to.
It doesn't have to make sense.
So
That's the
Yeah.
part about
definitely have
grief.
to go back and rewatch for context.
Yes.
But
yeah.
that's the part about grief to me, that it doesn't have to make sense to anybody else. Like grief is so personal,
Yeah.
and
It is.
trauma is so personal,
Yeah.
and how you process it. Like we get stuck in like what society or what everybody says is normal or what's abnormal, and then that's why we drink, because society says that's normal. That's how you healthily cope. Oh, having a bad day, the kids are stressing you out, have wine. You know, oh, you're celebrating because you had a big success, drink.
Yeah.
Like, and it's abiding by what people define as normal or abnormal that really like shrinks our lens.
Yeah. And it's almost like a chokehold. It can be.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, one of my favorite sayings is like, attachment is like the opposite of authenticity. Like our attachments keep us from being authentic. Attachments to our perception of who we are or who we think we should be, our attachments to relationships, to stuff, to money, really hampers our ability to be authentic. And
Yeah.
for me, that's where my goal is to be able to be authentic,
Yeah.
and live an authentic life.
You're pretty authentic to me.
Oh yeah. I mean, I just met you and I think you're extremely authentic. Like it's very inspiring. It really is.
I feel the same way about all of you. Like Carol has always like awed me with her ability to like unapologetically be herself, and you've always inspired me,
Good. Wow. Thank you.
Yeah. And
That part's true. And I've only known you for 20 minutes, but you seem authentic to me.
Right. Well, that's where I'm working at. Like, I mean, for me, it took me, like I said, a while to even figure out who I was, without the context of my family or my sister,
or the addiction.
Or the addiction. Yeah. I mean, we're going back from alcohol to the further addiction of people pleasing,
Yeah.
You've got to learn. There's a whole set of value. Even my wife had to learn how to be a different wife after she had to learn how to be the wife of a sober guy again. And that doesn't go just for us.
Right. Oh, it goes for everybody. My kids, my two younger kids don't ever know me as drinking, but my older two probably do. Like they have memories of that,
Yeah.
Right. It was a good chat, Zelda.
Yeah.
Well, does everybody feel like we've had a meeting?
Yes, and I've got to go because I jumped up right from my nap to getting on the computer, and there's something you got to do after you get up from a nap that I really have to do.
Okay, do that, and that enough said.
Uh, count me in the serenity prayer in the moment of silence.
Okay.
All right, we can.
See yous.
Bye.
See,
Bye.
and 2 in the chat, and if you still need a meeting, and 3 if you're good to go. Think of the 3 as a heart.
We've had a really good past couple of meetings. They've
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
really good. And Sarah, I'm so glad you joined
Yeah.
and everything. It was really great to hear you and hear your story and share your energy. I think it was amazing.
And if you could text that book to the group or something,
Yeah.
because I'm bad about like having a
No, I've got this. So the lady, she's written a bunch of different books. I'll put up the Personal Power to Awareness, and then there's another one called Soul Love, which is about loving yourself on a soul level.
Perfect.
Yeah, start with Personal Power through Awareness, because that
Okay.
is the one that
I
I've
put you
given
in
away.
the group chat, Sarah.
I think I am on the Facebook group. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you put it in there, then we can all, yeah, because I'm curious too.
Right.
Yeah, and I'll maybe take some pictures of like
Okay,
the little
perfect.
worksheet and kind of what it is, so you can get an idea. But it's amazing. Like I've bought 15 copies and I've given away 15, and so I just ordered another one, and I'm like, this is mine. But
Well, let me give you my address. No, I'm just kidding.
hey, I would too. I'd be like, okay, you know what? I'll order another one. I need to just buy stock in that particular book. Like, you know,
Right.
get in touch with the publisher and be like, I'm going to need 50 copies a year. How much is that?
All right.
There's my credit card. So, but I will. I'll put it up.
Perfect. Thank you.
Of course. Of
Thank
course.
you, ladies. I appreciate this, Carol.
Thank you, Sarah, so much for being here.
Yeah.
It's always a good meeting when you're here. You have a lot to offer.
Oh, thank you.
I love your perspective on things. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been following up. We've been ending the meetings with a moment of silence for the person who's out there still suffering in their addiction, and also those who are struggling with recovery, because we know that's real,
Right.
and also the people we've loved and lost. And then we follow it with the serenity prayer. And sometimes we follow the serenity prayer with huzzah. So just be prepared.
That's fine.
We like a good huzzah.
All right. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Huzzah, men.
Huzzah. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Sarah.
Have a good night.
Love you guys.
Mwah.
Bye. You guys have a
Bye.
good night. We'll see you.
You
See you
too.
next time.
Absolutely.
All right. And peace, y'all. Have a good night. And thank you for being here.